we'll be talking about some psychometric principles and intelligence testing. So keep watching if you want to find out whether intelligence IQ tests actually measure our intelligence. You know how psychologists describe variables using an operational definition? Intelligence is very subjective too, but psychometricians are involved in trying to create some sort of test that measures intelligence. So, what defines a good test? A good test must be standardized, meaning that they have uniform testing procedures and the test must be graded in the same way for everyone. The performance on the test is usually examined with a pre-tested group and scores should form a normal curve. Examples of standardized exams, are SAT, ACT, and some AP exams. And then it must be reliable. For the test to be reliable, it has to yield the same results multiple times. It is the best way to test reliability by retesting and seeing if the score distribution is similar. And finally, it must be valid. Validity is the extent to which the test predicts what it's supposed to. Reliability and validity are two completely different things and they cannot predict each other. So here's a target analogy that differs or that states what's the difference between reliability and validity. If you were to shoot a bunch of darts and they all landed either to the right of the middle, you would have reliable results but not valid results. If you were to shoot a bunch of darts that landed slightly above the middle, slightly below the middle, slightly on the side of the middle, with a few darts far away, you would have valid results but not reliable results. So there are basically two primary types of tests. First one is achievement test, which checks what someone has already learned, like the unit exams you have at school or the AP test at the end of the year. And then we have aptitude test, which is designed to predict someone's success in the future. An example of this is the ACT or SAT, which are said to give colleges an idea of how prepared you are for college. And then how we develop tests. First, we have Albert Binet, and Binet was hired to study an education problem in France. In order to complete his task, he wanted to compare a children's potential to what the child was actually doing. With this, he came up with the mental age idea. Mental age is the age at which a person functions intellectually. For example, a 9-year-old could have a mental age of a 14-year-old because of their advanced knowledge in certain subjects. If a child has a mental age below their actual age, it means they struggle a little academically. The idea of an IQ arrived during this time. IQ equals mental age divided by chronological age times 100. This explains why the average IQ is 100. If someone is 15 years old with a mental age of 15, their IQ is exactly 100. Grit is basically passion and determination used to pursue a long-term goal. And then we have Louis Terman. It was eventually realized that IQ cannot cover all ages. For instance, how do I distinguish the mental age of a 53-year-old from the mental age of a 52-year-old? It's basically impossible because there isn't much development going on during those adulthood years. Therefore, Terman came up with the standard Stanford-Binet test, which was deviation-based rather than ratio-based. And then we have David Wechsler. The Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale is the most used intelligence test and contains different subtests like testing similarities, testing vocab, testing design and visual processing, testing letter and number sequences. It is so well known that there is also a Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children. And finally, we have Francis Galton. He didn't come out with an intelligence test, but he wondered if there was a way we could test intelligence and then match people with higher IQs together. He was part of the movement to encourage only people with high IQs to reproduce, and this is also known as eugenics, which is something that's kind of unethical. And then we have the normal curve. We keep talking about the normal curve and deviation, but do you not remember what those terms are? Intelligence scores usually form a normal curve, which is a bell-shaped curve with two extremes and a large middle. Let's discuss it. So the normal bell curve, as we discussed in Unit 1, is all about intelligence scores on a Wechsler intelligence scale. The low extreme is like a score below 70, and this means that there's some sort of intellectual disability that causes a person to have limitations in learning, have a hard time solving problems, have a hard time communicating, and lack in many skills needed for everyday life. People with intellectual disability have a really hard time adapting to the demands of life that require conceptual, social, and practical skills. An example of intellectual disability is Down syndrome, which is like an extra copy of chromosome 21. And then we have the high extreme. Those are that usually on the higher ends of the normal curve, and they are gifted. Their talents and intellect are beyond what is considered one's normal mental age. And finally, we have Savant syndrome. Individuals with Savant syndrome perform poorly on intelligence tests and have serious intellectual disabilities. However, they have a certain talent or skill that is above average. An example of this is someone can barely produce and understand language, but is a genius when it comes to mathematical calculations. So every test has some sort of bias, and Earl Hunt and Gerald Carlson had a debate over differences on IQ. The stereotype thread is one of the ways one's test scores could be affected because of bias. This is where someone may do worse on a test because they're told they aren't good enough because of the stereotypes that exist in society. If a black woman is told she is incapable of passing a medical exam, she may doubt herself, and the stress could impair her performance. The stereotype threat causes a change in our behaviors, which in turn affects our IQ. So I have a practice question here for you. What's the difference between an achievement test and an aptitude test? Pause the video and see if you can answer. So the answer here is D. An achievement test checks what someone has already learned, while an aptitude test is designed to predict someone's future success. So that's the end of the video today. Thank you for watching.